Hello, welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. Today, our guest is Andrew Gottlieb, and he is the founder and CEO of No Typical Moments. His company exists to create a new definition of success in business that changes the paradigm in terms of how we relate to one another, how we treat the environment, and how we uplift humanity to a deeper level of consciousness. That sounds like a pretty tall order, but they do that by implementing and teaching solutions to scale the messages of the world's top thought leaders. Lisa Nichols, Eckhart Tolle, um, Ken Blanchard, Mama Gina, and many others have worked with them with great success. And so I'm really excited to have him here. We're going to talk about what they do, how they do it, and it's going to help you as a leader of transformation listening in terms of how to get your message out there and even understanding the difference between B Corp and Benefit Corp. We're going to get into all that today. It's going to be a really in-depth conversation. So we're excited that you're here. And Andrew, of course, we're excited that you're here. Welcome to the Leaders Transformation.
Thank you for having me on today.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and how did you get into this work?
Sure. So my name is Andrew. I'm the founder and CEO of an organization called No Typical Moments. So I guess I can address that in two ways of how I got into the digital space and how I became interested in this concept of using business as a force for good. In terms of how I got into the digital world, it was really by accident. In college, I was that kid who did a ton of internships, was experimenting with what to do with my life. After college, I interned on Wall Street. I interned at a political consulting firm. I interned on political campaigns, and nothing truly resonated with me. Everything felt kind of meh, if I could describe it in a word. And in the middle of my senior year, I got rejected from every job I applied for. Not even like hey, here's the offer, and I had the chance to tell them no, just rejections from everyone. And as I was going through this self-exploration period, the spring of my senior year, I randomly was an email chain for a podcast that I had nothing better to do. I checked it out and I became fascinated with this guy who was running a blog from Costa Rica making six figures. So my initial interest in this was really just out of a curiosity of how the heck did this guy create a lifestyle to be like that? And as I started to dive deeper into the digital world, I actually realized how much I had a passion for marketing, technology, and just the ever-changing internet, which is still in its infancy almost a decade later. Kind of now tying that into the business for good concept, I was in kind of this two extreme worlds when I was in college. So I initially thought I was going to go to Wall Street, which was really the profit at all costs world. I then experimented with the idea, as I was getting rejected by all those jobs, is maybe join the Peace Corps. And they were two very extremes. And I had this epiphany through a speech I heard in the summer of 2011 of this whole other world of business, of how organizations like Patagonia, Tom's Shoes, Mind Valley, you name it, were for-profit companies that were actually making a positive impact in the world. And I decided to take that lens through the digital space of how can we support causes, authors, thought leaders who have a clear mission like those organizations to make the world a better place, and we can be their support arm to amplify those messages.
Got it. So when you work with these thought leaders, is it that you are focusing on their message, getting their message out there, and that's strictly the way that you make a greater impact? Or do you actually do business in a different way in terms of your business model, your business structure, how you work with your employees?
I would say it's both. So we do have a selection process of the types of organizations we take on as an agency. It's a combination of mission and our services is actually going to help them, just very practical. And we have a kind of internal vetting process of how we determine that. And I'm also very clear in my own biz dev and networking of how I'm getting intros and referrals to the right type of organization. So I'm very clear. And when people ask me who to make connections for, this is our ideal avatar. In terms of how we conduct ourselves internally, like you mentioned earlier, we are a benefit corporation. that is also our North Star, with some guiding operating principles of how we treat one another internally, how we communicate to clients. We also have giving strategies of how we're involved in the local community in San Diego. We've been partnering with two nonprofits over the years called Outdoor Outreach and the Greatness Foundation. One is supporting at-risk youth in the San Diego region. Before COVID, we would do quarterly volunteer outings with them. And then the other is a Greatness Foundation, which builds homes for families in Mexico, in Ensenada. We are shifting our giving strategy a little bit now entering 2021. In the past, we've been a member of 1% for the Planet, which means we've been donating 1% of gross revenue to these types of environmental nonprofits. Moving forward, we're looking to do more active pro bono consulting work with nonprofits. So we're going to be working with a soccer organization coming up this summer, in which we're going to be helping them with their campaigns to drive more donors and awareness and attendance at some of their events they have planned. So
Nice.
we're shifting the model a little bit to be a combination of, instead of just donation based, to a combination of donation, pro bono services, and volunteerism when things open back up in California, which hopefully that will be this year, and we'll just take that one by year.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. I was reading a book recently by Lynn Twist, and The Soul of Money, and she talks about the collaboration, the partnership. Yes, nonprofits and or those that are struggling may need money to do the things that they're doing, but even more so, they want partnership. They want collaboration. They want people that are involved. And I recently read a study from the John Templeton Foundation on generosity and the impact of generosity. And it talked about how the power of volunteering actually inspires even greater generosity from there, and how it attributes to wellness, happiness, fulfillment in so many different ways. And so I think the more we do that, and you're a great example of that, is like the more we do that, the more fulfilled we are, the more successful we are, but also the greater impact that we can make in the world. And it's just kind of like, it's like a snowball effect, that the more we do it, the more we want to do it. And so that is awesome. Now, you talk about a benefit corporation. Talk about the difference between the benefit corporation and a B Corp, because these are often intertwined and we don't necessarily know the difference between the two.
Sure. So benefit corporation is a legal status. Anyone can change their legal status to be a benefit corporation. So we are a California benefit corporation taxed as an S Corp. That's our legal framework. A B Corp is an actual test and certification program. So just like to become organic or a green building, you go through a process to be audited, in which you need a score of, I think it's 83, something around 83, in order to get that B Corp certification. You then have to keep your standards and excellence, and you could be audited by B Corp auditors, I guess, coming to your office to ensure you're keeping up what you said you did in the assessment form. Now, with us being a completely virtual company, it's not as what would be the right word? I'll give a comparison of my friend's organization is called Thread International. So they take reusable plastic in Haiti and turn it into consumer good products. So with them, it's very clear of some of the ethics that they need to uphold between their supply chains, their actual material using product, and so forth. With us being completely digital and pretty much all operating in the cloud, it would be a different framework of our assessment versus theirs and how we would be audited. Ours would be a lot more on how we're treating our employees in some of our organizational philosophies versus a tangible product we're creating and making sure it's sustainable for the environment.
Got it. So for the benefit corporation, what advantages does it give you?
Sure.
Stating that you're a benefit corporation.
I would say a couple of things. I'll give a use case with us, and then how it could be beneficial for other organizations. So With us, it's great from a recruitment standpoint to show that we're actually talking or walking our talk. Purpose driven, whatever is kind of the new cool, and everyone's saying they're purpose driven in doing something. And this gives some more tangible evidence of this actually means something. And it's not just a fancy line we're putting on our website. It's also great in terms of clients who share our worldview that we can show, hey, we know you're vetting 3 other marketing vendors, and you want a marketing vendor who's aligned with you, and we have this certification, or not, we have this legal status at our organization. Now, if you were attempting to pursue investment dollars, this would be a great selling element of getting funding from an impact investment firm. They want to be allocating their money to fellow B Corps, benefit corporations, and if you can show that status, it's going to be a great in to gain access to those types of organizations.
So is there a process that you need to go through to achieve that?
Really, it's just a legal documents to fill out. I used a law firm. His name is Francisco Barbera. He actually is a law firm that is a B Corp and a benefit corporation, and he specifically helps organizations go through that legal process to shift the framework.
Cool. So, yeah, and that's just helpful, just because, for those of us that don't really know, how do you do it? What is involved in it? I think that's really helpful. Now, one of the things that I also wanted to talk to you about, and we talked about this briefly beforehand, is the fact that you are a young leader, and you are leading, you are hiring and firing people that are older than you. And there creates this like dynamic as a millennial, if you will, working with people that are older, and possibly even bringing on clients, working with companies where their CEO might be much older than you, might be the age of your father or grandfather even, or grandmother. And so what are some of the things that you've learned in that process, doing that could be helpful to some millennials that are listening? And possibly even the older people that are listening as well, in terms of them having to report to somebody like yourself?
Sure. What I've learned is there are definitely generalizations and stereotypes about different age brackets and how they operate to stress, pressure, all of the things. Maybe I can give some frameworks of what I've noticed with different age brackets, the good and the bad of them. So I would say for individuals who are a little bit older, my dad age, or maybe even granddad age, they're all about respect and honesty, and very, very traditional. Work hard, get paid fairly, all those things. Don't, what would be another one? I'd say getting very clear on contract language, stuff like that, making sure everyone feels really good. I'd say with that too, they're not as keen to the whole give back, save the world mentality at times. I would say on the flip side with millennials, they're all about the give back, save the world, what feels good in this moment. They're less about, normal, what I've noticed with baby boomers, the honesty, the respect, those aren't necessarily the values that they operate with. It's, in my experience, is a lot more of what feels good in the moment. And so I think it's really important then for me, as I'm hiring and firing, to know how to customize a lot of my communication depending on the age bracket and how they respond to the world. I've noticed that for baby boomers, just being right to the point and direct, it doesn't really matter to them. I'm always keeping it professional, but you can just be straight to the point, and you don't need to sugarcoat or fluff your language. They just want to know what's up and let's move forward. With millennials, I've noticed that there's less of an emotional intelligence of understanding how to deal with tough situations and stress, and there's a lot more of sugarcoating stuff to know how to interact with them. And I've noticed it's so fascinating. I've noticed that there's definitely a big trauma response from millennials of dealing with me asserting myself as the CEO and owner of the organization. I almost feel like individuals' daddy issues. I kind of become the surrogate father in a way of I'm like the authority male figure. And if there are some unresolved trauma issues with the child dad complex, they definitely get brought up to me. And I would say kind of the reverse with people who may be baby boomers. I believe they sometimes view me as their son. And it can be startling sometimes when I assert myself and make it known like this is my company, I'm the CEO, this is how things go. It feels like their son is disciplining them, and they can react in a weird way as well.
Yeah, I remember growing up, my parents had a successful business, had multiple businesses, but one in particular got us involved in a business organization. And so I grew up around all these people that were older than me. And as when I was a kid, it was fine. But when I got older and now I'm kind of like their peer, they're like, "Hey, kiddo." And I'm like, I'm not a kiddo, anymore. I'm an adult. I run a business, a successful business and so forth. And so sometimes it's just being careful with the language that we use, or intentional and respectful of people, because somebody like yourself who's much younger has a lot of life experience in a particular area. And so, yeah, but I remember them, they used to call me kiddo, and I'm like, and some still do, a couple of people still do. And they're like, "Hey, kiddo." And I know they mean it fondly, but the way it sometimes, I don't get offended easily, which I know
Mhm.
is rare these days, but I don't really get offended. But if I did get offended, I think that that would be one of the things that would grate on me as a, from getting it from people who are even older than me. And I'm not young anymore, if you will. So yeah, it's really, I think now more than ever, it's really important, because the values have changed generation to generation so dramatically, in many ways, from the baby boomers to the millennials, versus maybe in the past where the values were kind of carried on a little bit more
Mhm.
consistently. So yeah,
I would
really
say
interesting.
another big thing is with my generation of millennials versus baby boomers. I believe that generation is much more of company loyalty. You stay here for a long time. Millennials are job hopping constantly. And I would say for me as a CEO, what it feels like sometimes is there's definitely a wave of entitlement, I feel, and as if unless I say yes to everything, then that person is just going to jump ship and quit. That's something for me to work through. I think it's something I've experienced as a CEO of just millennials leaving very quickly and jumping to a new job who pays them more, and not having that long-term outlook and company loyalty that baby boomers definitely are well known for. It's almost like you have a year or two to maximize your engagement with that individual, and then they're gone. That's and I Another very interesting cultural thing that's happening right now, if you're a college basketball fan. Uh, so there's a transfer portal rule that came into effect, I want to say this year or last year. And I believe there was almost 600 D1 college basketball players who are transferring this year alone. I'm from Pittsburgh. I'm a big college basketball fan. There were 5 players this year alone who transferred.
Wow.
I don't remember 5 people transferring in the last 20 years. And that's, I think, just a cultural thing now. And I think it's playing out in the transfer portal with college basketball of they're not happy. They're not seeing loyalty to the university who signed them with their scholarship. And it's just like, nope, I'm going to jump ship over here, see what happens, and I'll jump ship again. And it's just really fascinating to look at just how things are shifting with that.
Yeah, it is interesting. Actually, there was somebody I had recently had on the show, James Sinclair, and he developed the Enterprise Alumni Program and platform in helping organizations with their alumni, the people that leave, and the value of those relationships. He said, like, it's you can't calculate it, because of the people that might come back, the boomerang employees, and or the referrals that come out of it. But what you're talking about is, yeah, like, they're moving around. And I love what he said. He said, when I hire people, I in the interview ask them and say, okay, So when you leave here in 3 years, what do you think your next job is going to be? What role do you think you're going to have? And so we can prepare you for that in this role. We may or may not, they may or may not stay with the company, right? They may go somewhere else. And so he said initially it takes them aback because they're not expecting to have that conversation. And he said, well, let's have the conversation. So there's never a surprise when you come to me and say, hey, I'm leaving to go to the next company. That, like he said, people here, they don't just up and leave anymore. Like they don't. We don't have that issue at our company because they know that I'm there advocating for them, supporting them, and have been preparing and knowing that they are going to leave at some point. And so it's a flip on the way to approach it. And yeah, that is definitely a paradigm shift for people that are older, that are used to, you spend 25 years or 30 years at the same company in the same industry, and it actually comes down to even like this niching. And you're in the marketing business, so maybe this is a good question for you to answer as well, getting your perspective on it. Is, how it used to be like that you had to really niche down. And now you see on LinkedIn, people are like, I do this, 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 and this. And it's like random, it seems random. Like there's like a lot of things that they do. Now it can be ineffective in that sense where they're all over the place. But it just seems like it's much more popular nowadays and common for people to say, hey, I do a lot of things. I've got a diverse, my creativity, I express it in many different ways. Can you talk about that? Like what's the healthy balance between that, where you don't seem like you're a Jack or a Jill of all trades, but you don't niche yourself so narrowly that you're missing out on all the other things that you actually do?
Sure. Maybe I can take this in how our service offerings as an organization have shifted. And it's like at the onset, it was any and everything, and it's gotten cleaner and cleaner to what we really are as our bread and butter. So I would say my advice is when you just graduate from college, the truth of the matter is you really don't have you don't have much relevant skills from a business perspective. Like maybe you had a finance degree or I had a managerial economics degree. That really did not set me up for success in my first job. I think long term it did. I almost believe at the onset of your career, it is important to just keep on experimenting, figure out what you actually enjoy and what you're good at. I mean, mentality is just as an individual from an 18-year-old to being one is worlds apart. And what interested me at 18 does not interest me at 31. So I think keeping that open mind, even between verticals and industry you want to be working in, I think it's good to be experimental. I would say as you start to advance in your career and hone in on industry you enjoy, skill sets that you enjoy that are relevant, you can start to hone in your expertise. With that, though, I think you're going to pigeonhole yourself to say, for us, like we're the Facebook advertising firm. We've been really getting away from that because, and even say you are a Facebook advertiser, I don't think you want to bank your entire career on Zuckerberg. And, Google and or Apple and Facebook have been battling winter with what's called an iOS update, and it had the potential to kill Facebook advertising. So if that's your entire career and that's the only skill set you're setting yourself up for failure. So I think it's a combination of experimentation, starting to hone in and be agile to know that the marketplace is shifting and your skill sets, the new technology that's being developed is ever changing, and you get to continuously update your wheelhouse of skills to make yourself an even more valuable employee or business owner as you advance further.
Yeah, and that makes sense because these are methods, whether it's Facebook or whether it's podcasting or whatever it is, those are methods. Methods change, practices change, but the principles don't change. And the things that are your true skill sets. So in my coaching it's transformational, but it's all strengths based. So identifying what are your strengths. And a lot of times when you think about what your strengths are, people go to vocation. Well, I'm really good at Facebook ads, let's say. But there's actually there's strengths that are inherent that you could apply to anything. That's why I love like the Strengths Finder, for
Mhm.
example, their assessment. You know, it's things like achiever, relator, connector. Like you can use them in any industry. So those are the core strengths. And then it's how you use them, you play them out, depending on what you're actually doing. So if you look at like you're good at something, it's Facebook ads is how you're actually applying it, but it's what's underneath it, which is your true strength. And if you
Right.
sell that, then that will never get old, if you will. You'll never become obsolete because it's always going to be necessary. So maybe with that, as we're talking about principles, I know you're also a very principled person in terms of the way that you show up and maintain your performance and maintain your productivity, how you operate at your best. So what are some of the things for millennials that are up and coming and wanting to operate at their best? What are some of the things, the tips that you have for them, even just like on a day-to-day basis in terms of their time management, their energy management, their relationship management, what kind of things would you recommend for them?
Sure. I would say uh, the first is having a disciplined approach to exercise. For me, I'm exercising probably at minimum 6 days a week, sometimes seven, sometimes multiple workouts a day. And that's really the foundation for my energy of how I get through going for 10, 12 hours a day is my commitment to fitness and working out. I would say the next thing is the elimination of what I would say is toxicity. So I think that can be applied to relationships. It can be applied to your nightlife on the weekends, food, whatever it is. And that was one of the most important messages I remember hearing from a professor in college. He was our entrepreneurship professor, and he was the CEO of a company. He took public, sold his shares, made a lot of money, and came back to teach in higher education. He was very uh, firm with us when we were seniors, second semester, telling us, that's great that you guys can party and whatnot on the weekends. And if you really want your to be accelerating, that stuff gets to stop. And that really rang true for me of you can't be out till 3 in the morning on Saturday, you recover all day Sunday, and then it takes you till Wednesday to feel good again. Then it's Thursday and you're ready, and then it's the weekend and you're just in that continuous cycle. You're going to fall behind, and maybe you could keep that going for a couple of years, but your body changes as you get older, and it's not going to work as well for you when you get into your 30s and 40s. And then I would say the last would be being very aware of your mental health, getting support there. That's in the form of simply listening to podcasts, reading books, meditating, working with coaches, therapists, going to UPW with Tony Robbins. I think that's become even more relevant in the last year with our stay-at-home workforce and how we're just inside. Or I know you're in California too, so we get the great outdoors here. But I'm thinking of people in Pittsburgh still in the winter, more mental health, and make sure you're not slipping is super, super important.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I'm from Canada, and just like with Pittsburgh, you might go 3 weeks without seeing the sun there,
Mhm.
and it can get very dreary in January or February. And so your mental discipline, your mental capacity, and that focus and keeping yourself filled up in different ways is so, so important. And I love what you mentioned about even just starting off with exercise, exercising your body, exercising. What I heard was really, it's like exercising your body, exercising your mind, your spirit. It's this holistic approach to it, to peak performance. And they sound like things that are like, yeah, we've heard those things before, but how many people actually do them? And when you practice them, they make all the difference. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And so I want to ask you before we kind of wrap up here, what what brings you the greatest passion? Like what, when you get into that project, you're just like a kid in a candy store. What is that for you?
A work project or just something in
Whichever.
general
Yeah.
that can I give two examples?
Go for it.
So one
Yeah.
is something external and one is internal. So I would say one of the things that brings me the most joy in my life is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Uh, it's something that's almost religious for me every Sunday or Monday night, watching that game. And I get a ton of joy and excitement and inspiration from, off-season workouts, what's going on during the season. And even from a management philosophy standpoint, what stands out to me is that the Steelers have had three losing seasons in the last 30 years, I want to say 29 or 30 years. So in terms of organizational excellence, I think that is astonishing of what are they doing culturally, developmentally wise, everything to have that standard of excellence. So that's my North Star of I look to see what the Roonies are doing. And I think, okay, how can I apply that to my own organization? Um, and then I would say the other is so I actually in February I tried out for a pro soccer team. I was 6 years above the cutoff age. I'm 31, 25 was the age limit, and they granted me the exception. I wrote a pretty compelling email to state my case. I should be allowed, and I would say the training now I'm doing for soccer to get back into men's leagues in San Diego is very grounding and inspirational. Of keeping my body and mind in peak performance. And I remember last night I was looking at some photos of friends that I grew up with, and seeing their lack of discipline with health and fitness, and how our body can change drastically in a decade. And my inspiration is, to be like Tom Brady on a much scaled back version of how can I continue that level of excellence, discipline, as I'm entering older age, and that's a big inspiration for me to keep up with that.
Nice. Well, I think it's important to have balance, and you mentioned both of those cases, you mentioned inspiration. And so when you get out and you do something completely different, you can bring that energy back to what you're doing. And so as much as I believe in focus and discipline, and I've always been that way. And it's what I noticed is, and even at one point around your age, I all of a sudden realized, wow, you know what? Like I'm really imbalanced here and all I'm doing is working. And so to have those outlets, makes all the difference to keep you going and inspired. And even just seeing the way somebody's doing it in a different, or taking the lessons that you're learning in one area and bringing it over into the other area makes a huge difference. So yeah. And I've seen a lot of successful people, worked with them. They've been my clients, friends and so forth. And when I think of the ones that are the most successful and that are the most healthy in their relationships and in their discipline and their mindset and the sustaining power, the endurance that they have, they're all healthy. They're all fit. And I say healthy, I mean physically they are in shape. They take care of their temple so that this vehicle that drives them, that they go around in, that drive around in, that it actually is in good shape. They feed it good fuel. They take, good care of it, maintenance and so forth, and upkeep. And it's so important. Otherwise, you just don't have the sustaining power. And I notice a lot of entrepreneurs, they have big dreams, big goals, things they want to create in the world, and they run out of steam, literally, in the process of that. They get tired, worn out, because they're not taking care of their body. Like what you said earlier about toxicity, is they're putting junk in their body, garbage in, garbage out. So I think that's really, really powerful. And I love hearing what people are super passionate about. I know you're passionate about your business, but I also know that successful people have diverse interests as well, other things that they look at. And so that's cool. Now, in terms of the way that you do business, is there anything that, in terms of, like, let's say you work with Eckhart Tolle and Lisa Nichols, two very different personalities, how do you work with them, or what do you do with them that helps them to get their message out, that maybe even our leaders of transformation that are listening, they might learn from, in terms of tips, in terms of getting their message out there into the world, making a greater impact? What type of tips would you have for them?
Sure. And one last point I'll make on the previous question was, I believe there's seasons of life. And what I mean by that is, I believe for me, the last year was very much a let's hunker down with work and finance. I think it presented a really amazing opportunity with no travel, limited social connection of, let's really use this time to get ahead work. And I feel like with the reemergence of society almost now, a season is to enjoy life. We've been all just hunkered up for the last year waiting for this thing to pass. And I think it behooves all of us to take a vacation, get outside, reconnect with friends that we haven't seen in a while. Don't lose focus on the work and finance and let that go. But I believe that's going to be a lot of my focus heading into the summer, is just feeling like I'm a normal human being again.
Very true.
To your point of tips and tricks. So we have a process internally that we call the impact with profit methodology. So it's, how do we create conscious messaging? How do we utilize rapid prototyping in our campaigns? And how do we also have a awareness to the P&L of our clients? So that's kind of the lens we take in our three-prong methodology approach. To someone who is wanting to, I'll just give the example of Facebook ads, tap into the first time. One thing that is going to be really important with the new iOS updates on your Apple device is there's going to be less what's called retargeting and tracking available potentially for advertisers. So that means is people who are visiting your website, you might not be able to run ads to them as effectively as you did in the past. So what is really important for organizations is to have just a consistent lead gen effort going to build your audience, your database of folks, and just have some type of simple lead gen campaign for $500,000 a month, whatever it is, to build up that database of individuals. Now, in terms of online advertising and why that's important is you can then create a lookalike audience. So you can take that email list, upload it to Facebook, and Facebook will say, here's another million people who match the same demographic and psychographic intel as your email list. So if you're waiting for an offer to be debuted, it's a really great way to build your initial community. And then when the offer is ready, you have enough data to upload to Facebook that Facebook can say, hey, here's another really good subset of people who might want to purchase your product or service.
Got it. So there's a question with that. So when you mention about, so you're saying build the list, and you're talking about specifically building an email list. So you're basically taking it off the platform and then bringing it back to on the platform to create a lookalike audience.
Correct. The essence of advertising is you want them to get off of Facebook as quickly as possible and onto the your website and onto your email list. So that's really the nature of the game. Facebook advertising is very much a pattern disruptor, as that individual is not on Facebook because they're searching for your product or service. So you create a pattern disruptor with your ad copy and creatives to convince them to click and go to your website. And it's like a split moment decision that the individual makes to take you up on that.
Got it. Now you focus on Facebook. Do you also focus on LinkedIn and some of the other platforms that are a little bit different in the way that they work?
Yeah, so we do pretty much every main social media platform. Pinterest is one we don't do. We have talks of maybe experimenting with TikTok. A lot of our clients' avatar of their own clients are not on TikTok, so that's why we're debating on that. But yeah, Facebook and Instagram are really a package deal, as Facebook owns Instagram. Google is a lot different because people are actively searching for your solution. So you create a Google AdWords campaign that tries to capture the keywords someone is searching for. So it's very intent-based advertising. The last is YouTube. YouTube is obviously all video, which sometimes have limitations with, and people are usually on YouTube searching for how-to videos. And so you're wanting to get your ad in front of the video they're actually looking for. So it's great for awareness building. And it can be great as well as a complementary platform from a Facebook and an Instagram as well.
So that was actually, that's good, because that leads to my next question, which is, do you recommend, let's say, when you work with a thought leader, that they are on all the platforms and give equal attention to all the platforms? Or do you usually have one that is a leader, one or two, and then the other ones are more just sort of supporting?
We recommend starting with Facebook and Instagram, get some good data, get some results, revenue in the door, and then we can diversify the ad spend to the next platform.
Got it. Got it. And where does LinkedIn come into all this?
So there's two things you can do with LinkedIn. You can either do a direct outreach campaign in which you're sending private messages to folks to connect and trying to advance the conversation from there, or a traditional advertising campaign on LinkedIn. LinkedIn as well, if you think from a psychology standpoint, people are on Facebook, Instagram, Google, YouTube, and LinkedIn for 5 different reasons. None are the same. So LinkedIn is much more you're on for your professional career. So, Instagram, for lack of a better word, has a lot of like butt models and people without their shirt on. That would not be applicable to a good LinkedIn campaign, because people are, wanting to advance their career, all things like that. Instagram is a little bit more superficial with that stuff. So it's a part of you understanding your avatar, your product, and which platform could be the best for them.
Yeah, got it.
And LinkedIn's costs are also higher than all the other ones. So we're a little bit hesitant to fully dive into LinkedIn campaigns. It can work, but the costs tend to be a lot higher than the other platforms. Their ad platform just isn't as well developed yet.
Got it. All right. Well, thank you, Andrew. I appreciate a little bit of insight, and I encourage our listeners to go to notypicalmoments.com to really understand more about what Andrew, what he's doing. Also, go check out his podcast, which we didn't really talk much about, but the schoolforhumanity.com/podcasts, and check out what they're doing, and learn about it. If you're a thought leader or aspiring thought leader, one of the things that's really important is to work with a digital marketing company that understands what you need, where your audience is, and how to connect you to your audience, how to message it properly so that you're reaching out to the right people, and using your investment in the right way. And so that's why I was asking a few of those questions to Andrew, and maybe give you a little bit of a taste that they can work on any of the different platforms. It's really finding the ones that's going to work well for you in terms of what you're looking to do, who your audience is. So highly encourage you to check that out, and check out what they're doing, and even just seeing about their model. And that's why we started off there, is talking about the model of how they're doing business differently. And so if you're a CEO or you're building a company and you're saying, hey, I want to build a company that is purpose driven first, and also, is profitable, because those two things can go together, and they ought to go together in terms of, from a business strategy. Then look at what Andrew is doing, look at even the model and the structure of how they've done their business. And so that can give you some ideas. So I encourage you to do that. And again, Andrew, thank you for being here today. We really appreciate you and sharing a little bit of your insight today.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
It was a pleasure. And and again, thank you for being here. To our listeners, if you like this episode, please leave us a rating and review on your favorite platform. And make sure you tune in next week, as we have another amazing guest coming on the Leaders of Transformation to inspire you and equip you to be the difference maker that you're capable of being. Have a great day, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.